The peaceful Zenthari collective had lived in harmony for over 3,000 years. Their blue-skinned people built beautiful cities that floated among the clouds of gas giant planets. They were scientists, artists, and philosophers who had never known true war. That peaceful existence ended the day the Vex arrived. The Vex were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. These creatures looked like giant space locusts, each one the size of a small building. They traveled in massive swarms that could block out entire suns. But the worst part wasn't how they looked. It was what they did. The Vex consumed everything living. It would land on a planet, eat every plant, every animal, every person, then move on to the next world like a plague of hungry ghosts. Elder Corvin stood on the bridge of the Zenthari flagship, watching through the main screen as his people's outermost colonies died. The Vex bioships looked like massive insects made of metal and flesh. They attached themselves to space stations and drained them dry in hours. Entire cities that had taken centuries to build were gone in days. How many more worlds have we lost? Corvin asked his aide, though he dreaded the answer. 17 colonies in the past week, Elder. The swarm is moving toward our core worlds. At this rate, we have maybe 2 months before they reach our homeworld. Corvin's hand shook as he processed this information. 2 months. His entire civilization would be extinct in 2 months. The Zenthari had tried fighting back, but their weapons were designed for scientific research, not war. Their ships couldn't even scratch the Vex armor. Sent out the distress call, Corvin finally said. It's broadcasted on all frequencies, in every language we know. Maybe someone out there can help us. The message went out across the galaxy. Most civilized species received it, but quickly decided the risk was too great. The Galactic Council held emergency meetings, but couldn't agree on action. Some species had fought the Vex before and lost entire fleets. Others were too far away to help in time. Zenthari's cry for help seemed destined to go unanswered, but the signal traveled farther than anyone expected. It reached the edge of explored space, bounced off a communications relay, and found its way to a small monitoring station orbiting Earth's moon. Admiral Jake Thompson was having his morning coffee when the alert came through. He was a big man with graying hair and scars from old battles. Thompson had spent 30 years preparing humanity for the day they would meet alien life. He just never expected it to happen like this. The Resolute was humanity's pride and joy. This massive warship was 3 miles long and packed with enough firepower to level a small moon. It served as the flagship for the Terran Defense Coalition, Earth's military force. Thompson had been in command for 5 years. His crew was the best humanity had to offer. Lieutenant Kelly Brooks was working the communications station when the alien signal came through. She was young but skilled, one of the first humans trained specifically for alien contact. The message took their AI system several minutes to translate, but when it finally came through clearly, the bridge fell silent. Admiral Brooks said quietly, "They're asking for help. Their species is being wiped out by something called the Vex. They're sending coordinates and tactical data about the enemy." Thompson studied the information on his screen. The Vex sounded like a nightmare, but that wasn't what worried him. What worried him was that the Zenthari had no idea what they'd just done. Humanity wasn't just another peaceful species. They were apex predators who had clawed their way up from the bottom of Earth's food chain. Every human alive was descended. From survivors who had faced ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that would have ended most species. The Terran Defense Coalition had spent decades building the most advanced military force in human history. They had weapons that could crack planets and ships that could travel faster than light. But more than that, they had something most aliens didn't understand: the willingness to fight impossible battles and win. "Sir, what are your orders?" Brooks asked. Dotson smiled grimly. The Zenthari were about to learn why humanity had never lost a war that mattered. "Contact the other ships in the fleet. Tell them we're going to make first contact with an alien species, and we're going to do it by saving their lives. This is what we've been training for, people. Let's show the galaxy what humans can do." Retress. Elder Corvin felt a mix of hope and terror when the response came back from the Terrans. Someone had actually answered their call for help. But as he dove deeper into their database to learn about these mysterious rescuers, that hope quickly turned to pure fear. The information about Sol 3, the planet these humans called Earth, read like a horror story. The gravity was nearly twice what most civilized species could handle. The atmosphere was filled with a highly reactive gas called oxygen that would literally burn the lungs of most aliens. Massive storms regularly devastated the surface with winds that could flatten buildings. The oceans were filled with predators the size of starships, and the land was covered with creatures that existed solely to hunt and kill other living things. "This can't be right," Corvin muttered as he read through the data. According to their records, Earth's dominant species had evolved from persistence hunters. These humans would literally chase their prey for days without stopping, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. It had forward-facing eyes like all apex predators. Their entire culture was built around warfare and competition. The database showed that humans had been fighting constant wars for their entire recorded history. They had weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. They had created diseases specifically designed to kill other humans. They'd even split the atom and turned it into a weapon of mass destruction. What kind of species would do that? To their own planet, Elder, his aide whispered nervously. There's more. The reports say they consume the flesh of other living creatures. They actually eat other animals while they're still warm from the kill. Corvin's 3 hearts nearly stopped beating. The Xanthari had been vegetarians for millions of years. The idea of eating another living creature was beyond horrifying to them. These humans weren't just dangerous, they were monsters. But the worst part was what the database said about human technology. Any species that could survive on a death world like Earth would need incredible technology just to leave their planet. Their ships would have to be built like weapons just to escape that crushing gravity. Their weapons would be designed by minds that understood warfare at a level most civilized species couldn't even imagine. Sir, his aide continued reading. It says here that humans have something they call nuclear weapons that can destroy entire continents. They've actually used them on their own species during something called the World Wars. They fought a global conflict that killed over 50 million of their own kind. Meanwhile, on the human destroyer Vengeance, Captain Lisa Rodriguez was having a very different conversation with her crew. She was a tough woman who had worked her way up through the ranks of the Terran Defense Coalition. Her Marines respected her because she never asked them to do anything she wouldn't do herself. Listen up, people, Rodriguez addressed her assembled Marines. This is the moment we've all been training for. First contact with an alien species. These Xanthari are peaceful folks who are getting slaughtered by some kind of space bugs called the Vex. We're going to help them, and we're going to represent humanity while we do it. Sergeant Danny Walsh stood at attention with the rest of his squad. He was a career Marine who had seen action in the corporate wars on Mars. To him, this was just another mission, but he understood the historical importance of the moment. What? Do we know about these aliens, Captain? Walsh asked. They're non-violent, highly intelligent, and completely unprepared for warfare. Think of them like space diplomats who've never seen a real fight. The Vex are basically space locusts that eat everything in their path. Our job is to get between the bugs and the civilians. Private Amy Chen raised her hand. She was new to the unit, but had already proven herself in training. Captain, what if the aliens are scared of us? Rodriguez smiled. It was a good question. Then we'll show them that humans know the difference between enemies and friends. We protect those who can't protect themselves. That's what makes us human. Back in Xanthari space, panic was spreading faster than the Vex swarm. Word had leaked about the incoming humans, and now entire civilian populations were evacuating their worlds. They weren't just afraid of the Vex anymore. They were terrified that the cure might be worse than the disease. News broadcasts across Xanthari space showed families tacking their belongings onto evacuation ships. Children cried as they left their homes, while parents tried to explain that the Deathworlders coming to help them might decide to keep their worlds instead. These humans, one news broadcaster reported with barely controlled terror, come from a world so dangerous that it has shaped them into the perfect killers. They have never known peace, never known mercy. When they arrive, they may save us from the Vex, but who will save us from them? Elder Corvin watched these broadcasts with growing despair. He had called for help to save his people, but now it seemed like he had doomed them to a different kind of destruction. The humans were coming, and nobody knew if that was a blessing or a curse. Retress. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the very edge of Zenthari space, appearing like deadly shadows against the backdrop of distant stars. There were 12 ships in total, led by the massive dreadnought Resolute. Each vessel was a masterpiece of human engineering, built for one purpose: to fight and win against impossible odds. Admiral Jake Thompson stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display update in real time. His jaw clenched. The colony world of Therian Prime was under attack. Massive bioships, each one the size of a city, had attached themselves to the planet like giant ticks. They were literally draining the world dry, consuming everything from the oceans to the atmosphere itself. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Kelly Brooks from her station. "There are still people down there. I'm reading millions of life signs trapped in underground shelters." Thompson didn't hesitate. This was exactly the kind of situation humanity had prepared for. "All ships, this is Admiral Thompson. We have civilians in immediate danger. Implement Rescue Protocol Alpha. I repeat, prioritize civilian evacuation over everything else. Marines, prep for immediate deployment." Human fleet moved with deadly precision. Smaller destroyers and cruisers spread out to create a protective screen around the evacuation zone, while transport ships moved in close to begin rescue operations. It was a textbook humanitarian mission executed with military efficiency, but the Zenthari fleet commanders, watching from a safe distance, saw something very different. To them, it looked like the humans were positioning their ships for a planetary invasion. The way the human vessels moved in perfect formation, the speed with which they deployed their forces, it all screamed military conquest to the terrified alien observers. Commander Zethik of the Zenthari Defense Fleet made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Convinced that the humans had come to claim Zenthari territory once the Vex were gone, he ordered his ships to open fire. "All vessels engage the human fleet," Zethik commanded. "We cannot allow them to establish a foothold in our space." 12 Zenthari warships opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes streaked across space toward the human fleet. For a moment, it looked like the aliens might actually damage the human ships. Then the humans fired back, and the Zenthari learned what real military power looked like. Captain Lisa Rodriguez was commanding the destroyer Vengeance when the alien attack began. Her ship shook slightly as Zenthari weapons struck their shields, but the damage was minimal. Human military technology was centuries ahead of anything the peaceful Zenthari had ever developed. "Captain, we're taking fire from multiple Zenthari vessels," reported her tactical officer. Rodriguez sighed. This wasn't how first contact was supposed to go, but she understood why the aliens were scared. "Return fire, but use non-lethal weapons. Only, these people are terrified, not evil. Disable their ships, but don't hurt their crews." The Vengeance responded with electromagnetic pulse weapons that the Zenthari had never seen before. Instead of trying to destroy the alien ships, the humans simply shut them down. 3 Zenthari cruisers found their engines dead, their weapons offline, and their life support systems switched to emergency power. They were completely helpless, but nobody was hurt. The entire engagement lasted exactly 12 minutes. When it was over, the Zenthari fleet was disabled but intact, and the human ships had barely taken any damage at all. It was the most one-sided battle in galactic history. Elder Corvin's hands were shaking as he opened a communication channel to the human flagship. He expected to hear demands for surrender, threats of destruction, or worse. Instead, he heard something that confused him completely. "This is Admiral Thompson of the Terran Defense Coalition," came the calm voice over the comm. "We're here to help with your Vex problem. Are your people injured? Do you need medical assistance?" Corvin couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Admiral, we attacked your ships. What price do you demand for your assistance? What tribute must we pay?" Thompson's response would become legendary among the Zenthari. "Price tribute. We don't want anything from you. We're here because you asked for help, and that's what neighbors do. Just send us your tactical data on these Vex creatures, and tell us where your civilians need evacuation." While the two commanders talked, Major Ryan Walsh was already preparing his Marines for deployment. Walsh was a tough soldier who had seen combat on 3 different worlds. To him, this was just another day at the office. "Listen up, Marines," Walsh addressed his troops over the intercom. "We've got search and rescue operations on a hostile world. The locals call these things Vex, but they're basically giant space bugs that want to eat everything. Standard Tuesday for us. Impossible suicide mission for everyone else." The Marines laughed at their commander's joke, but they were already suiting up for deployment. These were the best soldiers humanity had to offer, volunteers who had signed up specifically to face the unknown dangers of space. They weren't afraid of some overgrown insects. "Sir, what about the locals?" asked Sergeant Danny Walsh, the Major's younger brother. "The Zenthari seem pretty scared of us." Major Walsh grinned. "Then we'll show them what humans do best. We protect people who can't protect themselves. These aliens are about to learn that there's a big difference between being dangerous and being evil." As the human drop pods launched toward the surface of Therian Prime, Elder Corvin watched in amazement. The humans weren't conquering his world, they were saving it. But that just made them even more terrifying. What kind of species was powerful enough to destroy entire fleets but chose to rescue strangers instead? The Deathworlders had arrived, and they were nothing like what anyone had expected. The battle across 7 star systems began at exactly 0600 hours, ship time. What the Vex thought would be another easy feeding frenzy turned into their worst nightmare. Humans didn't fight like other species, while most civilized aliens would retreat when faced with overwhelming odds. Humans did the opposite. They got more dangerous. Major Ryan Walsh's Marines were dropping into hell itself. The planet below was covered in a toxic fog that would kill most aliens in under 5 minutes. The atmosphere was so corrosive that it could eat through standard body armor, but human technology wasn't standard, and humans definitely weren't. Like most species, "All right, ladies and gentlemen," Walsh's voice crackled over the cum as their drop pods screamed through the poisonous atmosphere. "We've got 10,000 civilians trapped in underground bunkers. The Vex are trying to dig them out like they're opening cans of food. Our job is to make sure that doesn't happen." The drop pods hit the surface hard, bouncing and rolling across the rocky terrain before coming to a stop. Most alien species would need several minutes to recover from such a violent landing. The human Marines were out and moving within 30 seconds. Sergeant Danny Walsh kicked open his pod's door and immediately started taking fire from Vex drones. These creatures looked like a nightmare combination of insects and machines, with razor-sharp claws and acidic spit that could melt through metal. They were fast, vicious, and had already wiped out 3 different civilizations. "Contact front," Danny yelled to his squad as he opened fire with his plasma rifle. "Bugs everywhere, Peterson. Get that heavy weapon set up. Chen, start marking civilian locations." To the Zenthari observers watching from orbit, it looked like complete chaos. The humans had just crashed their ships on a planet that would kill them in minutes, and now they were running straight toward creatures that had destroyed entire armies. It seemed like suicide. But to the Marines, this was just another Tuesday. They had trained in the toxic swamps of Venus, fought in the ice storms of Europa, and survived combat exercises that would be considered torture for most species. A little poisonous air and some oversized bugs weren't going to stop them. Meanwhile, in space, Commander Lisa Park was leading her fighter squadron in attacks that defied all military logic. The Vex bioships were massive, heavily armored, and protected by swarms of smaller attack craft. Most pilots would try to stay at a safe distance and pick them off slowly. Park had a different plan. "Go Squadron, this is lead. We're going in hard and fast. Use the ramming formation we practiced over Jupiter. These things want to eat everything in sight. Let's give them some indigestion." Her fighters dove straight at the Vex ships, using their superior speed and human reflexes to dodge the alien weapons. At the last possible second, they would fire their main guns directly into the bioship's weak points. then pull away at speeds that would turn most alien pilots into paste. The G-forces were brutal. Humans could handle punishment that would kill other species. One of Park's pilots, Lieutenant Jake Morrison, wasn't so lucky. His fighter took a direct hit and started spiraling toward the planet's surface. Species would eject and hope for rescue. Morrison had a different idea. "Lead, this is Morrison. My bird's dead, but I've still got momentum. Taking this bug with me." Morrison aimed his dying fighter straight at a Vex bioship and hit the afterburners. The explosion when his ship impacted was visible from orbit, and it took out one of the largest Vex vessels in the fleet. Down on the planet, things were getting even worse. The Vex had deployed their most feared weapon, a flesh-eating plague that had wiped out entire civilizations. This biological weapon was designed to consume any living tissue it touched, spreading faster than wildfire and killing everything in its path. Dr. Kevin Hayes was running a field hospital in the middle of a combat zone when the plague hit. He watched as Xanthar refugees started showing symptoms, their skin turning black and peeling away as the disease consumed them from the inside out. Most medical personnel would have evacuated immediately. Hayes rolled up his sleeves and got to work. "All right, people, we've got a new player in the game. This bug looks nasty, but it's still just a biological agent. We've dealt with worse during the Mars colony outbreak." While explosions went off around him and Vex drones tried to break into his medical facility, Hayes worked on developing a countermeasure to the plague. He tested samples of the disease, analyzed its structure, and started working on a vaccine. When his preliminary tests looked promising, he did something that horrified the watching Xanthari. He injected himself with an experimental vaccine, and then deliberately exposed himself to the plague. "Doc, are you insane?" shouted Corman Lisa Wong, as she saw what Hayes had done. Hayes grinned as he continued working, even though alien death spores were literally trying to eat him alive. "It's just another bug, Wong. We've got immune systems that evolved on Earth. This thing might be scary to aliens, but we eat worse stuff for breakfast." The vaccine worked. Within hours, Hayes had developed a treatment that could stop the plague cold. He distributed it to his medical teams, who then started treating both human and Xanthari casualties. The Vex's ultimate weapon had been defeated. By a human doctor working in a tent, Admiral Thompson coordinated the entire operation from the bridge of the Resolute. His crew had been working non-stop for 36 hours, surviving on combat stimulants and pure determination. Most alien species would have collapsed from exhaustion hours ago. "Sir, we've got reports coming in from all 7 systems," Lieutenant Kelly Brooks reported. "The Marines have secured evacuation routes on 4 worlds. Commander Park's squadron has cleared orbital space around 2 more planets, and Dr. Hayes has distributed plague vaccines to all combat zones." Thompson nodded grimly. The Vex had picked a fight with the wrong species. Humans didn't just survive impossible situations, they thrived in them. These alien bugs were about to learn why Earth had never produced a species that knew how to quit. The silence that followed the retreat of the Vex swarm was deafening. For the first time in months, Xanthari space was quiet. No more screaming emergency broadcasts, no more desperate evacuation calls, no more worlds dying in real time. Nightmare was over, and it had ended in just 72 hours. Elder Corvin stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the tactical display that showed the aftermath of the battle. The Vex had lost over 90% of their forces. Entire biofleets that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries were nothing but floating debris. The few surviving Vex ships had fled into deep space, probably never to return. The humans had done the impossible. They had faced an enemy that had destroyed 3 major civilizations and beaten them so badly that the survivors ran away in terror. But that wasn't what kept Corvin awake at night. What terrified him was what came next. "Elder," his aide whispered nervously, "Admiral Thompson is requesting a private communication channel. He says it's time to discuss terms." This was the moment Corvin had been dreading. The humans had saved his people, but now they would name their price. History was full of stories about powerful species who helped weaker ones, only to enslave them afterward. The Xanthari had been desperate enough to accept help from anyone, even Deathworlders. Now they would pay the cost. Corvin took a deep breath and opened the communication channel. Admiral Thompson's face appeared on the screen, looking tired but satisfied. The human leader had been coordinating a military campaign across 7-star systems for 3 straight days without sleep, something that would have killed most aliens. Admiral Thompson, Corvin began, his voice barely steady. Our people owe you a debt we can never repay. What do you demand of us for this salvation? Our worlds, our technology, our service? Thompson looked confused for a moment, as if he didn't understand the question. When he finally spoke, his words would become legend throughout the galaxy. Demand? I don't demand anything, Elder Corvin. We're just glad we could help. Your people were in trouble. You asked for assistance, and we responded. That's what neighbors do for each other. Corvin felt his 3 hearts skip a beat. You've saved our entire civilization. Surely you want something in return. Thompson smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression Corvin had ever seen. Not because it was cruel or threatening, but because it was genuinely warm and friendly. Elder, the only thing we want is to know that your people are safe. Consider us neighbors now. If you need help again in the future, just call. While Corvin struggled to process this impossible conversation, the human fleet was already preparing to leave, but they weren't just packing up and going home. Captain Lisa Rodriguez was personally overseeing the distribution of supplies to Zenthari refugee camps. Make sure every camp gets medical supplies, Rodriguez told her crew as they unloaded transport ships full of aid. These people have been through hell. The least we can do is help them get back on their feet. The supplies. The humans left behind were worth more than most civilizations' entire military budgets. Advanced medical equipment, defensive satellite platforms, communication arrays that could contact Earth. Instantly, all of it given freely without any strings attached. Lieutenant Kelly Brooks was helping coordinate the relief efforts when a young Zenthari child approached her. The little alien was clearly scared, but curiosity had overcome fear. Are you really from the Death World? The child asked in broken English. Brooks knelt down to the child's level and smiled. I'm from Earth, yes, but it's not really a death world. It's just ... challenging. We learned to be tough because we had to be, but that doesn't mean we're mean. The child thought about this for a moment. My daddy says you're the scariest people in the galaxy because you help others for free. Brooks laughed. Your daddy might be right about that. Dr. Kevin Hayes was working in one of the largest refugee camps, treating Zenthari civilians who had been injured during the evacuation. Many of them were still suffering from exposure to the Vex plague, but his vaccine was proving highly effective. Doctor, one of his patients asked through a translator, why are you helping us? We have nothing to give you in return. Hayes looked up from his medical scanner and shrugged. Because you needed help, and we could provide it. That's reason enough. The patient stared at him in amazement. Your species is very strange. Yeah, Hayes agreed with a grin. We get that a lot. Elder Corvin spent the next 3 days trying to understand what had happened. He interviewed every human he could find, searching for some hidden motive, some secret agenda. He found none. The humans genuinely seemed to expect nothing in return for saving an entire civilization. This doesn't make sense, he whispered to his aide as they watched the human fleet preparing to depart. No species in galactic history has ever helped others without expecting payment or conquest. What kind of people are these humans? His aide, who had been studying human culture during their stay, looked up from his datapad. According to their history files, they have something called Good Samaritan laws. They're actually required by their own culture to help others in distress, even strangers. It's built into their basic moral code. Corvin felt dizzy. A species that was legally and morally obligated to help others? It was the most alien concept he had ever encountered. When the human fleet finally departed, Admiral Thompson sent one final message to the Zenthari leadership. If you ever need help again, just ask. We'll come running. The report that Elder Corvin sent to the Galactic Council would be studied by xenobiologists for centuries. We have encountered the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They possess military technology beyond our understanding, and the fighting spirit of apex predators. but their greatest weapon is their inexplicable desire to help others without reward. They show mercy to enemies, protect strangers without payment, and fight impossible battles as if they were routine training exercises. Beware the humans of Sol 3, for they will save you and expect nothing in return. This may be the most terrifying thing about them. As Earth came into view on his ship's main screen, Admiral Thompson allowed himself a small smile. Humanity had just announced itself to the galaxy in the most human way possible, by helping those who needed it most. He had a feeling this wouldn't be their last rescue mission. The age of human expansion into the galaxy had begun, and it would be unlike anything the universe had ever seen.